Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to give it just a couple more minutes in case anyone is having any difficulties joining us to give them a chance to sign in and get set up. So hang tight. All right, Rebecca, I'm going to give it one more minute and then we're going to get started.
Sounds good.
All right, we can always let more people in as they join us. So let's go ahead and get started. My name is Erica. I am the adult specialist here at Central Library in the Science and Technology room. Thank you everybody for joining us today for Fight Back Against Scams Targeting Our Community, presented by Rebecca Phoenix of the Better Business Bureau. Not only is she an investigator with the Better Business Bureau, she is also a wearer of many a hat, but I am going to let her tell you more about that. Before I turn it over to her though, if you do have questions as they come up, please feel free to type in the chat box there and we will try to get to as many of them as we can. So, Miss Rebecca Phoenix, I am going to mute myself and let you take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, Erica. And thank you all for joining today as we talk about what we can do to deal with scams that are targeting our community. So I'm going to talk about three things today. I'm going to talk about what is actually going on and who's involved in it. So who are those scammers? And then I'll talk about the scams themselves, the things to watch out for, and then what you can do about that. Now, one of the reasons that I find this really interesting is that I've been an investigator with Better Business Bureau for several years now and have seen a lot of the scams come and go. What's really interesting to me is that this is this time of COVID has presented so many more opportunities for scammers, and they're taking every one of them. They're just ahead of us. So I am very excited to be able to share that with you so you know some things that you can do. And education is one of the best tools in dealing with scams. Now, I actually started as a journalist, as an investigative journalist out of college, and got my degree in journalism from the University of Oregon, and worked for a time in the field, and then started drifting into the business world a bit more, and got very involved in leadership and organization development. So I was working more on the business side of things for a long time, and helping leaders to become better leaders of businesses, essentially. And then when I came to Better Business Bureau, it was a time that I could return to my journalism roots and do some investigative journalism and writing. But the other nice thing about it is that it gives me the opportunity also to work on the business side, helping businesses to be better businesses and to recognize those who are doing good things out there. So I find this one of those opportunities that uses a lot of the strengths that I have, and I find that really satisfying. So one of the things that I also find satisfying is really connecting to this mission, which our mission is to be the leader in advancing marketplace trust. So I'll talk a little bit more about what that means in practical terms, but we have had this mission pretty much since 1912. So as I like to say, we're a 100-year-old organization with kind of a startup attitude. You know, we keep coming at these things in new ways, in new programs. And so the good thing to know is that your Better Business Bureau in St. Louis is an award-winning Better Business Bureau in doing a lot of good things, including things like this. Here's a list of some of the free things that you can use that you may not even know that are out there. We do keep business profiles on every business that we know. So if you log into bbb.org, or if you give us a call, we'll tell you what we know about a business and what consumers have shared with us. We offer dispute resolution, which means that if you have had an interaction with a business and didn't go well and you tried to resolve it with them, but they didn't take care of you, we will help get involved and continue to facilitate that conversation so that you can hopefully come to a resolution that works for both of you. We also do advertising review. So we're watching for false advertisement claims that are out there, or things that are not necessarily clear, that don't lend themselves to building trust in the marketplace. And you can also alert us to some of those claims if you see them. We provide charity information. So what we do is work with charities to help them to become accredited. And that means that they have to pass a more than 20 standards that helps you to know what's actually going on with the money that you give to this organization. Does it really go to the services that you think it's going to? We provide a consumer e-newsletter so that you can stay up on what's going on out there, both with tips for dealing with legitimate businesses and legitimate consumer issues, as well as information about scams that are going on. We do in-depth investigations and issue warnings on companies that may not be doing good business practices. In other words, they receive an F rating on our scale of A through F. And so we let the community know about that and work a lot with the news media to get the word out on those kinds of organizations. And then we also issue tips on just how to deal with a myriad of consumer issues. We go in depth and do some research into scams and international scams, as well as simple poll questions that kind of help you to know what's going on specifically in our BBB region that serves the St. Louis area and some of the outlying areas, both in Missouri and Illinois. And then we take a look at scams not only targeting consumers, but also those targeting businesses. You don't always think about that, but scammers are also out there, particularly trying to scam small businesses. And then we do things like this, community outreach, where we're sharing information with you to help educate you. So that's just a little bit about BBB. Now, let's get back to our topic of the day here, which is how do we protect ourselves against the scams going on out there? And so we need to know a little bit more about scammers. And there are certain situations that will create a great opportunity for scammers to be effective. And one of those is any kind of disruption or confusion going on, either in the world, in the marketplace, or with people personally. And COVID is a prime example. There is a lot of confusion going on there, and scammers were there, before just about anybody could even think about it. They were there, and they don't always have to get real creative. They can take a scam that's worked in the past and just tweak it a little bit for the current situation. They will prey on people's fear, their loneliness, or their embarrassment about reporting a scam. And so they definitely know how to harness that. And you'll see that in some of the examples that I'm going to share with you. And they also kind of tune in and use our fear of missing out. So they'll create kind of a hype over something, and a lot of us will go for it because we just don't want to miss out on that thing that they're promoting. And they are really good at impersonating trusted relationships. They can even impersonate family members, friends, government. When you just think about anybody you trust, they can be there and impersonate and trick us into believing that they are somebody that we know. They do things with anonymity, so it makes it really hard to find those scammers, which is the frustration. We hear that a lot from consumers who reach out to us, is that they want help in catching these people. And we know a lot of what goes on, but because of the anonymity and the untraceable methods that they use, it becomes very difficult for us to help law enforcement with this as well. And just a little fun fact, BBB is not a government agency or involved with law enforcement, but we do work closely with them. So we can hand off a lot of the information that helps in investigations, or helps a law enforcement agency even to start an investigation. They use our unfamiliarity with technology. We see that most directly with technology scams. But there are other ways that they do that as well. And the thing about scams now that has changed since BBB first started is this whole global connection. It used to be that scams were conducted by a con man, so to speak, which meant a confidence person who had skills in gaining the confidence of people and would pull them into kind of a fake story or scenario, and always to take their money. Well, now it's not just one person doing this, it's a whole network of people, crime families, if you will, that are connected and share information. And so it makes it much more effective for them, and also much more difficult to trace. And they use untraceable payment methods. So things like gift cards and wire transfer, which essentially create situations where once your money is used in one of those situations, it's gone and it can't be found. And we'll talk about some of those situations. So you might think, okay, this is all good to know, but I'm not going to fall for this. Let me ask you this question. In the last 3 months, have you come across any of the following? Have you received an unsolicited text message? Did you get a robocall? Maybe you got an email from somebody and it included a link, somebody you knew or you didn't know. A phone call from somebody you didn't know that you accepted. Did you get a fake check? And maybe kind of pass that off as, oh, that's just a promotional thing. But fake checks are certainly a scammer's tool. Did you get see an unfamiliar website that had a product at a great price that really tempted you? Or maybe that a hard to find product. And so you thought, well, this is a new website because this is somebody who's providing this product that's hard to get. Maybe things like masks. A crowdsourced donation request, with all of the things going on in the world right now, from natural disasters to people who are sick and needing support in some way. It's very, very easy to receive a crowdsourced donation, and that can certainly tug at our heartstrings, but it can also be a way, as we'll talk about, that scammers reach out to people. Did you get a mailer that requires you to take action immediately, tries to create a sense of urgency? Or maybe something fun like a social media quiz that asks you a variety of different fun kinds of questions. Or maybe some kind of an off-platform interaction, like you were in social media or like Facebook Marketplace, and somebody wanted to have just a private conversation with you. Well, if you can say yes to any of these situations, and I bet that there's multiple ones that you could say yes to, then you have potentially been targeted by a scammer, because these are some of the very typical ways that they will reach out and start to find people who they can target. Now, they do come across a lot of people who don't go for it, but it only takes one or two or a handful of people to make it very, very lucrative for them, and they know it. So they're really playing a numbers game in terms of trying to find people to target. So keep these in mind as we talk about some of the scams that come up. So the scammers, as I mentioned, are often these international crime rings, and they are involved in multiple scams. Why? What is it they want? They want two things. They want your money, always, and they want your personal information, which they can turn into money. So it always goes back to money. That's what they're after. And you may think, well, I've never really given anything significant like my social security number out to anybody that I didn't know. And that is a very important piece not to give out to people you don't know. But they can use little bits of information and pull it all together into a whole profile. And each time that profile gets more information about you, it becomes more and more valuable. And that's one of the things that is sold amongst scammers and enables them to be so effective, and kind of leaves us, sort of scratching our heads like, how did they get me on this? How did they get this information? It's because they're out there doing this all the time. It is their business, and they're really good at it. Now, there are some particular scams that we're finding do target particular groups of people. And this is from the latest study from AARP, which found that the top scams among Black and Latino communities are lottery and sweepstakes scams, work from home scams, and government imposter scams. So we will definitely talk about those and what you can do about those. So what are sweepstakes and lottery scams? Well, it's anything where you've supposedly won something, but they'll say that you first need to pay taxes, which kind of sounds like legit. There's a lot of taxes that must need to be paid, or shipping costs or customs or other fees. But the thing to know, and this is a spoiler alert here, is that if you are ever contacted about having to pay something up front from a sweepstakes or a lottery situation, it's most likely a scam, because they take that from your winnings. So those winnings can include things like a cash prize or the traditional lottery, but it can also include things like expensive jewelry or exotic cars, and it can be many things: free cruises, vacations. The more that they can sweeten the pot, the better. And they'll claim to represent something that's maybe just a little bit off, like a foreign lottery, which, again, spoiler alert, it's illegal to participate in a foreign lottery. So that's a red flag. But they'll also claim to be something familiar, like Publishers Clearinghouse. And Publishers Clearinghouse, if you go to their website, they will tell you all the scams that they see currently and how to tell whether or not it's a legit or Publishers Clearinghouse kind of situation or not. And again, another spoiler alert is that they usually don't alert you in advance if you have won something. But scammers can also impersonate legitimate charities, but they will sort of tweak it a little bit. So the name will be just slightly different than something that's legitimate, or they'll make up a name that even sounds like a legitimate charity. And you should always beware of scammers if they're asking you for copies of ID. Really, you should be asking them for statements. But again, if you don't know for sure that you're working with the real charity or the real sweepstakes organization, they can fake the kinds of things like a website that looks almost identical to the real one, but it'll be a little off in the URL, and they can fake documents. So just keep in mind that they are not going to require you to send in money. They're not going to notify you about winning, usually, particularly if it's Publishers Clearinghouse. And if you haven't entered and you don't remember entering, you probably haven't won. You have to, as they used to say, you have to enter to win. And then you cannot participate legally in a foreign lottery. So those are some ways that you can protect yourselves against those kinds of common scams that people are experiencing right now. Another big one is what we call employment or job scams, where, again, scammers are impersonating legitimate companies. They're posting jobs on legit websites like Indeed and others, or they're text messaging you about a job. And here again, they're more after initially some personal information, because think about it, if we apply for a job, we're usually providing things like social security numbers, our age, all of our contact information, all of that information. So that becomes, it may just stop there. But they may also get you involved in doing some things that end up being illegal, like reshipping of goods. They'll send you things in the mail and then have you repackage them and forward them on. And what that really is money laundering. And it's very, very common. So you, I'm sure, would not agree to participate in that if you knew that, but they make it sound like it's a legitimate job, and it usually only lasts for 1 month until your first paycheck is due, and then suddenly they're gone. You can't connect with them and you never get paid. Other things that we're seeing are secret shopper, data entry and envelope stuffing, not so much anymore. Every once in a while, a day trading stock kind of situation. But we are seeing more of these taking online surveys and car wrap, which a car wrap scam is where you're told that if you will be willing to drive around with a car that has advertising on it, that they'll pay you for that. And they will send you a check in advance. So there's a red flag that for you to go pay to have your car wrapped. The thing about it is that check is going to be a fake check. It's going to bounce. So when you actually try to send it to the company that's the company that is going to provide the car wrap, you are drawing from your own funds from the bank if you've deposited that, and then you end up losing that money. So again, if a company is asking you to pay some money up front, or they're going to send you a check in the mail, have you deposit it and do something with it, that's a really bad red flag. And you want to stay away from that. We are issuing an in-depth study on Thursday of this week into this. So if you kind of keep an eye open in the news or go to bbb.org, and you can get more on this one if you want to find out more. Government imposter scams are the third one that I mentioned there. And this can be any kind of situation where you receive, usually it's a text message currently, but from somebody who claims to be from the IRS, Social Security, it could be the CDC or Medicaid, Medicare. And right now we're seeing scammers do things like free COVID-19 tests. They may pretend to be doing contact tracing. And the FBI has reported about $450 million lost in those 5 years between 2014 and 2019. So this is really lucrative for scammers. And here's what they do, the red flags, and these are some of their tactics, is that they will threaten arrest or suspension of like your driver's license or other kinds of scare tactics. They're going to ask you for confidential information so that they can do identity theft. And they may actually just try to get you to click on something to opt out of these. They'll just keep sending these text messages to you to really annoy you, and then give you an option to opt out of them. And they want to get you to click on that, which again, we said don't click on things like that. So that's kind of how they work that one. And if they do actually get you to participate, they're going to ask for kind of weird situations for you to pay for whatever it is they're saying that you owe, like through gift cards, money order, wire transfer, cash payment, Bitcoin. We see all of that. So really make sure that you're dealing with the organization. And again, if you don't think that you've done anything wrong, get a credit check, find the number online and call them yourself, and they should be able to tell you if there's really something involving you. Now, we also see them currently participating, scammers, in some kind of a government economic impact check. So this started when we started receiving these. They're still going on, even though that's not necessarily happening right now. And so again, comes through text messages mostly, but you'll every once in a while, somebody will reach out to you pretending to be a friend of yours, maybe from Facebook, and telling you you can get in on this thing and wanting you to get involved. And then it's usually somebody pretending just to be a friend. So watch out for official looking envelopes, anything that's requiring you to take action right away, and any kind of links on there where they want you to click on something. Now, some other imposter kinds of situations that we're seeing, and we saw this really big actually in 2018. We call these virtual vehicle vendor scams. It's a kind of a tongue twister. And this has resurrected during COVID as well, because cars have been in short supply during COVID due to the chip shortage. And so what happens is that the scammers will pretend to be somebody selling a car or other vehicles, and every kind of motorized vehicle, on Craigslist, eBay Motors, Facebook Marketplace. And they will say that this is a very safe thing for you to do, to buy from them, because they're using a third party organization that will hold your money, and while they send the vehicle to you, and you can take a look at the vehicle, take it for a test drive. And within 5 days, if you don't want to keep it, you can send it back to them and it'll be at their expense. The problem is that the money is not being held in escrow. It's being held by scammers, and they disappear with it. The vehicle never arrives. And there has been about $57 million lost in the past 3.5 years. So watch out for a sad story, and it's usually like somebody's spouse or child has passed away, or they're being deployed, something like that. It's a sad story, and they're offering the vehicle at too good to be true prices because the vehicle holds bad memories for them, is what they say. Another red flag is that you can't see the vehicle. Don't buy a vehicle, don't buy a pet unless you can see it in person, because this is the way scammers operate. They do create very legitimate looking websites, but the red flag is that the website's been up for less than a year. If they're saying that a third party is holding money, another red flag. Payment by wire transfer, or if they are trying to move off the platform, such as eBay, that's another red flag. And those are very clear situations for a vehicle scam. We'll switch gears a little bit to another love. Some people love their automobiles. Other people are looking for love. And this is, again, another one where people say, I would never fall for this. And yet so many people do. And it's heartbreaking what they go through, because this is what used to be called the long scam. This is not a quick transaction. This is something that happens over a long period of time. The people who are targeted are usually isolated. They're single. They are trying to go online to safely meet others during the pandemic, although this has also happened before that. And there are usually responding to a fake profile that's being used to lure them. So there's a lot of fake profiles out there, but this is, again, very well procured by these scammers, and they have tried to really perfect these, so they look pretty good. And then once they start emailing or having some kind of a conversation, they move pretty quickly to try to sound like they're in love, or that, oh my gosh, you're the most wonderful person. And this continues, and it's often very flattering and really draws people in. And then when they think that they've really kind of got you to believe, an emergency happens. And that's one of the first really big red flags. And they start asking for money. And eventually, the money is being sent. And if they really think that they have the person kind of captive, then they start to get them actually involved in receiving money from other people. And so they essentially become what's referred to as a money mule. They're helping to move money, whether they know it or not. So the red flags, moves off platform. There starts to be excuses for not meeting in person. They very quickly start using terms of endearment, sweetie, honey, beloved, and terms that maybe people, don't hear very often too, because a lot of these folks are from other countries where they're not always up with the latest lingo. And they gather information quickly about the family, because they're trying to find people who don't have necessarily a tight family network to support them. And they really don't want them to share any kinds of information with family members about money that's being transferred. So those are really big red flags. Oops. Now, another kind of impersonation that we're seeing are people who are pretending to be from a fake loan company, but it's fake, a law firm or another government agency that's contacting you because you owe money. And let's face it, a lot of people do owe money during the pandemic. So they'll threaten lawsuits, garnishment, arrest. But the red flag is that they don't give you some kind of valid notice of your debt, which is always required in these situations. And particularly if you have no outstanding debt, just hang up on them. Or if you see that there's no issues that have appeared on your credit report, then that's another thing that should tell you just to not have anything to do with them, and in fact report them. And right now, I believe you can get almost daily credit reports requested. Normally, you get one a year from each of the three major credit report companies, but you can get them more frequently because they do recognize that there's a lot of criminal activity going on. Now, I mentioned online puppy scams before in the same breath with cars because they operate the same way. And that is that you find, in this case, a cute puppy online, but you can't see the puppy. Now, they're not going to hold money for it, but what they're going to do is not let you see the puppy in person either. And they're going to use COVID as a restriction for it. And what happens is that if you send the initial down payment for the puppy, they start adding on more costs. And we've been seeing things like for fake COVID shots, for insurance, for an enhanced carrier, for fees to be held in quarantine, all kinds of things. But the bottom line is the pet never arrives and you may have paid multiple fees. People that we hear from who have fallen for this scam usually start to recognize it after more money is being requested. Now, one of the things you can do is to do what's called a reverse image search. So there's several ways to do that. If you don't know how to do it, you can just Google a reverse image search, but you can also do it in Google and it will tell you how to do that. And if you find that that image is being used elsewhere on the internet, then it's probably a puppy scam because there really should just be one cute picture of that cute puppy if it's a real one. Some other red flags, though, very low price for that breed. So you need to know what the going rate is for a particular breed. And then if you can't see the pet in person. Now, some advice that we've been giving people during COVID is, if you're really after a puppy or a pet during this time, to check out the shelters. There was a time when the shelters were kind of empty, but we're starting to see more pets going into the shelters again because of people either being evicted from their homes or because of some of the natural disasters going on. So that is something to check out. Online scams, those have been going up during COVID as well, because a lot of us are turning to the internet to do our shopping. So about 64% of complaints with money losses or in Scam Tracker have in some way to do with online scams. And the sellers are, as you see here, Facebook about a third, Google, a little over a quarter. Specific websites, those are the trickiest really because there are actually new websites going up, but that's also a very big red flag for scammers because they'll throw out there a website, they'll pretty much do maybe some slight tweaks and open it up under another name later. So if you find a couple of websites that look like each other, that can be what's going on. But they do use the places that we tend to go to as the place to kind of find us. And a little over half of people who reported being involved in these scams said that the online shipping tracking information that they got was fake. So, you've got about a 1 in 2 chance that tracking information is fake. And so don't rely on that as a way of telling if you're dealing with a legitimate company. It was the number one complaint involving pets and pet supplies. And then as we talked about, vehicles and parts as well. So most of these complaints come from people kind of in the middle range age-wise, 35 to 44, and then a large number of the complaints come from women. And we don't think that it's that women are targeted for this, it's just that women are often doing more of the shopping online. We do have a study that's going to be coming out on this. You can watch for that around in November timeframe, and there will be more information coming out on this. Another area that is just really particular to the COVID times, but there are always situations where there's fake products. And this is just where scammers will change the product to fit the times because they don't have to have a product. How quickly can they pivot? Pretty quickly. So what we've been seeing during COVID is that they will come out with products and make false claims for them. They have been selling face masks, when those were in short supply, but they're still selling them out there and then they never come, or they're of far inferior quality, let's just say. And then miracle cures and cleaning products. They are issuing fake endorsements or government claims. And then they inflate the prices on particularly hard to get items. And the Missouri Attorney General's office was very serious about cracking down on those kinds of situations. So this is where we see a combination of what we will call scams, which is when there is someone involved in trying to get money from you, but they have no intention of providing a product or a service. That is what BBB would call a scam. There are also companies that will provide something, but it's of an inferior level of quality, or it's not what they said. So for instance, somebody who says that they're selling an electric drill or a handheld drill, and then they send you a screwdriver. They're obviously, you got something, but it was not what you thought you were paying for. So that we would say is a bad business or a bad business practice. And so those are kind of two different things. And we see both of those operating in this arena of fake products. But the web, you don't really care. You just want your products to arrive and to get what you paid for. So the red flags for you they're going to be things like some kind of a recent website that's popped up, and go to the contact information part of that website. Because if you can't find a place where you can contact them directly that actually works, don't do business with them. Because if you do have a problem, you're going to want to know how to get a hold of them. Also, take a look at what their warranty or guarantee is and read the fine print, because you can also find yourself signing up for subscriptions to things that you did not intend to, just by making an initial purchase. So know what the return policy is. Make sure that they have legit research behind any claims that they're making, and then check for negative online reviews off that website, because they can create fake positive reviews, but you're going to want to see. And here's a little hack for you. If you want to see what, if something is real, if it's a scam or not, there's a really simple formula for that. And that is to put the business name or the scam that you think you might be looking at, and put the word scam in there and just do a Google search. And that will bring up lots of different websites, including BBBs perhaps, but others as well. And you can see what other consumers are saying. Now, social media quizzes, you may think, well, isn't that pretty innocent? Well, there are some that are innocent, but there are also quizzes out there that are very intentionally being used by scammers to collect personal information, or to take you to one of those subscription places where you end up signing up for payments on a credit card for something you didn't intend to. So they will collect personal information. They'll ask like, where'd you go to high school? What was your first car? Any of those things sound familiar? Because those are often typical security questions. So that's what they're gathering there. You sometimes aren't the target. Sometimes they're getting you to respond, and then they will go in and impersonate you and contact other people in that social media platform. And sometimes they use the information to create fake identities, and then those are sold on the black market. So you probably know about a lot of these things, but don't just sort of pass them off. Lock down your privacy and security settings. Change your password often. Don't give answers to questions that are often those security questions. And monitor and vet your friends list. If you don't know somebody who's on your friends list, particularly on Facebook, get them out of there, because I practically daily receive requests for friends from people who I don't know, and who have a very suspicious looking profile. When you start looking at it, they look like they're don't have much on there, and pretty new. So keep monitoring those things. Government and grant scams. Again, as we're finding ourselves needing money, sometimes people turn to or are hoping for loans and grants. The way that this works is that you'll hear from somebody, again, who sounds like somebody you know, and they'll say, hey, I came across this scam, they won't say scam, this grant or this loan, and I thought you might want to know about it. And thing is, you didn't ask about it. So they'll put you in contact with somebody who will then start giving you information about how to do this and then start collecting information from you. And eventually they're going to want payment, but gift cards, how are you going to make a gift card payment for a loan or a grant? But they'll come up with some sort of plausible story for it. So they'll use other things, Cash App, debit cards, or they may say, you know what, your payment didn't go through. So here's what we're going to need to do, because if you don't get this done by this time, this is what's going to happen to you. And they be wary of situations where they're promising you a loan or a grant, and you've got bad credit history. It's probably not going to really happen. They may ask you to pay up front for fees. Again, that's a big red flag. And if it's a payment made to a particular individual and not to a company, that can be a red flag. And they may use, and they often do use, legitimate company names. So you really have to do your research there and go to the real website. And you could even ask somebody there if they've been if they are aware of any impersonations going on. And I've done that for ones that I've personally received, and that was the first time that they've heard of it. And then I sent them the information about the people who were impersonating the company. Fake charities, we see a lot of this right now going on because of all of the disasters out there and different situations where people really are in need of help and support. Scammers often ask for money or gifts in kind, and they will pose as charities with fake copycat names. So if you take a look at the names there, those are all fake, but they sound pretty real. The red flags for these is that they don't have an IRS 990 form, and they won't provide information on their mission or their costs, and they pressure you to give money now. So, there used to be a time, as this picture illustrates, when there was a can on the counter at a convenience store, and you could pop some money into it for a particular individual. They'd have like a little sign up there. And if you don't mind giving away money like that, where you don't really know where it's going, you might be okay with this. But if you do want to make sure it's going there, then really you need to deal with legitimate charities. And you can go to give.org. And I don't think I have this up here, but it's give.org. And you can find out what organizations are right now providing information or providing services to, if there's a particular disaster that you're trying to support. Or you can find out about particular organizations. So that's a good resource for charities. Moving scams, that's the last one I'm going to talk about here. Moving scams are out there all the time, but again, are kind of an interesting animal in that these are often real companies, but they operate in a very scammy way. And this is what I mean. They will go with an online ad that provides fake positive reviews. And then they will give you a lowball quote on moving your stuff. So it could either be across the country or just across town. But they start having some fees pop up that they didn't disclose. And then they end up having delays in delivery. And when they do actually deliver things, they may use very unprofessional temp workers who end up breaking your items. But more often than not, we see the items being held hostage for more money. And that's literally what it sounds like. They say, you can't have your stuff until you give us more money. And then when the things arrive, they're damaged. You can't get refunds. And we have had thousands of complaints on this, either of the overcharging or other kinds of situations I just described. So the red flags for these is that they don't show up and inspect your items and give you an estimate. Or if they have an out-of-state business, but they have some kind of a local post box address. And if they're using rental cars, car or trucks, that's not always a scam, but it's often the scammers use that because they aren't investing in a fleet of trucks. And again, this is where you can go to Google and Google their name and see if what pops up there. Also, go to bbb.org and put the name in there, because we do keep business profiles on these businesses and we will tell you what we know. And there are a lot of bad reviews out there on the bad businesses. It'll also tell you if you're dealing with a legitimate business, because there are some very good moving companies out there. So that's a tricky one to navigate. So we talked a lot about some specific situations, and I want to kind of give you some summaries here because it can be mind-boggling about what you can do. And there's 5 things that you can do. And I'm going to go into each one of these in a little bit more detail here, but don't be a victim. Seems like a natural there, but I'll tell you how. Also support your local businesses. That's one of the things you can do. Look for integrity in the businesses. Not only take care of yourself, but others. And report bad behavior. Don't let it just slip by. So what can you do not to be a victim? Well, do your research. bbb.org, give.org, bbb.org. That'll cover you with businesses and charities. And don't believe everything you see, because scammers are about creating illusions. So question what you see. Don't send money by these untraditional methods like gift card or wire transfer, in particular to somebody you've never met face to face, but also Venmo and some other tools. They will always stay up with whatever is currently the most popular way to do things. So don't send money to people you don't know and you haven't met face to face. Don't click on links or open attachments, particularly in emails or in text messages when you didn't solicit that. And then double check on your online purchase. When you're checking out, look for that little lock on there to make sure that it's secure, and make sure that you read, again, the details in the transaction, particularly for returns. Use extreme caution when you're dealing with anybody you've met online. They're in it for the long haul. And never share personally identifiable information. Again, that goes beyond your social security number. Guard it. Resist the pressure to act immediately. Scammers, again, try to create a sense of urgency. So if you see that, that should be a red flag. And then do use secure and traceable transactions. What we recommend is that you use a credit card if you are buying something online or need to make payment in other ways. Why? Not so that you can rack up credit card debt, but so that you have an ally there. Because often if you're scammed in the process of using a credit card, the credit card company will go to bat for you. But if you use a debit card, it's going to just evaporate. Same thing as a gift card or using wire transfer, very difficult to trace. And then be cautious about the information that you share on social media. But other things you can do. Support your local businesses, rather than go online where, of course, you can get some really good deals. But if you have an opportunity, buy a gift certificate, either for future use or as a gift. Leave a good review on bbb.org or their website. That doesn't cost you anything. Like and share their social media pages. Share ideas with organizations, with companies that you like. Tell them thank you. It's a pretty easy one. Volunteer to help in ways, and instead of a refund, make a donation. Tip and refer a friend to them. Those are all things that you can do to help legitimate businesses that are local. and look for businesses that are doing good things out there. This is just some examples from the different BBB regional offices. We have them in Cape Girardeau. We have them in Columbia, Quincy, and in Springfield, Missouri, as well as here in St. Louis. But I just love this quote from Fred Rogers. When I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, "Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping," and you will. So the purpose of this presentation is not to scare you. It's to help you to be aware and to also recognize others who are doing good out there, and then to take care of yourself and others. Others not being just our friends, but businesses as well, that we should really treat each other ethically and with compassion, because at BBB, we believe that when this all settles down with COVID, that we're going to remember how we were treated during this crisis, and that's going to influence how we do business with each other in the future. And then report that bad marketplace behavior, price gouging, that kind of thing, cancellation of services, anything that goes on where you think that it's not real, but also the scams. And you can do that on Scam Tracker. This is at bbb.org, but you can also just Google Scam Tracker, and you'll see all the scams going on in the country that we know, and you can zoom in on those. It's kind of interesting. You can search by keyword and the scam type, certain time frames. But you can also zero in then on what's going on in St. Louis, and almost down to your neighborhood. So each one of these numbers represents the numbers of scams in that particular area. And then you can see the actual scams. I'll show you that in a moment. But report the scam. There's a button right there. It's a pretty simple little form, and you can report the scam. You can say whether or not you're even willing to talk to news media. That helps us to be able to help tell stories by getting the news information out to the media. And this is what it looks like when you see the actual lists of the scams that are being reported, and you can click on it and view what other people are saying. Their personal information won't be shared. So with that, we've got a couple minutes left. I think we can take some questions.
We do. Thank you. That was amazing and enlightening. If anyone has a question, please feel free to use the chat, or there aren't that many of us here today. If you just want to unmute yourself and ask Ms. Phoenix, we'll be happy to take those. We've got a few minutes. Thank you for explaining the difference between what the BBB considers a scam and what they consider bad business practice. That's good to know. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And I also am looking forward to the November study of online scams, as well as the job scams coming out on Thursday.
Great.
For sure.
Thank you.
Something else I learned today. So sorry, if anyone's got a question, please jump in anytime. I think it's really cool that you can report good business on the BBB site too. Mm-hmm. I have all the intentions of doing that and taking full advantage. Thank you for that.
Right. Right. Good. Good. Looked like Barbara might have raised her hand for a moment. Barbara, did you have a question?
Okay.
No question.
Okay. Well, now, Rebecca will be back on the 21st, or the Better Business Bureau will be back on the 21st with another presentation, which I am super excited to share with everyone. If you have not, protect yourself in a digital world, there's still space available. If you haven't signed up already, please visit the website and sign up. And if no one has any other questions, I just want to say thank you. Oh, she wanted to say thank you.
You're quite welcome. Everybody take care.
Thanks for coming today, and we will see you on the 21st. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.